Hello and welcome to the JBoss EAP 6 Beta Release webinar. My name is Suzanne and I will be in the background answering any WebEx technical questions. If you experience technical difficulties during the WebEx session, please contact WebEx technical support at 1-866-229-3239. Please note that as an attendee, you are part of a larger audience today. However, due to privacy concerns, the attendee number and list is not shown for all attendees. All attendees will remain in listen-only mode throughout the presentation, and as a reminder, today's call is being recorded. We will be holding a Q&A session at the conclusion of today's presentation. You may ask an online question anytime throughout the presentation today by simply clicking on the Q&A panel located on the lower right corner of your screen. Type in your questions and in the text field and hit send. Please keep the send to default as all panelists. With that, we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's presentation. I'd now like to introduce your presenter for today, Jason Anderson, Director of Application Products at JBoss. Jason, you now have the floor.
Great, and thank you very much for the introduction. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We're naturally very, very excited about the beta of Enterprise Application Platform 6. We've been working on it for quite some time. We've had a lot going on in the community. So the purpose of today is to get everybody up to date on where we are and get you pointed in the right direction to get started working with our new next generation products. I'm also joined today by Rich Sharples, who will be walking us through some of the really great new capabilities and features of EAP 6, as well as some of the other things we have going on that are pretty exciting as well. So we're going to start talking about some of the market trends that are driving us in the direction we went for EAP 6. And then after that, Rich will take over and really walk us through the product so everybody can understand what is new, what's going on, and how it works. So on that note, let's just dive right in. So JBoss, being part of Red Hat, has always been pretty involved in the infrastructure end of things, and now that there is such a focus in the industry on cloud computing, and Red Hat is being one of the companies that's helping drive and shape the future of cloud computing. When we sat down and started thinking about what would become EAP 6 a couple of years ago, we knew that we had to take certain considerations in hand. There's a couple of the major industry trends that really shaped our thinking around EAP 6. The first one was mobile. And as you can see here, here's some just general statistics. But if you look out 2 years from now, there's about going to be, or estimated, 1.7 billion connected PCs, smartphones, and tablets. So if you think about the ways in which somebody can connect to a web application, for instance, literally 1.7 billion different types of devices can interact. And almost half of those are actually going to be smartphones. So the idea that web applications are strictly a kind of PC-centric or a laptop/desktop-centric thing is no longer the case. In fact, most enterprises 2 years from now, when they build a web application, are going to have to figure out whether that is it's a 50-50 shot as to which format you have to develop in. So how is it that we can enable developers such that that is those factors, the factors that drive mobile application development, are mitigated as much as possible, or we provide enough flexibility so you can build a compelling experience regardless of the device. So how do we architect for these things? How do we build a platform for that? And the EAP 6 starts to get us on that path. That's really the front-end observation, but on the back-end, cloud and different types of deployment patterns are really starting to come to the fore. We're starting to see patterns similar to what we saw in the early days of virtualization with cloud, where people would deploy development and test environments in the cloud first before they went full production, before they went to mission-critical systems. Virtualization is very much a mainstream technology today, and we're seeing a similar pattern with cloud, where people are taking platforms as a service, such as Red Hat's OpenChef. They're doing their build and developing the application in OpenChef, and then they're coming back and saying, well, I've built it there, but I need to run it on-premise, or I need to run it in a hybrid cloud, or more and more we're starting to see requirements come from our customer base saying, I need to run it on-premise, but during peak loads, I need it to be elastic such that it can scale into a cloud-based infrastructure, and that cloud-based infrastructure is able to be purchased by the hour, by the month, however that particular cloud provider is providing it. So when you start to look at this idea of, customers are not strictly saying, I'm going to run everything on-premise or I'm going to run everything in the cloud, it's going to be based upon their needs and their time and, frankly, and their particular business requirements at any given moment or any given season. So we need to be able to make it such that the application platform, where the applications run, is able to easily be portable between all these different formats and work with all these different deployment patterns in order to make it simpler and easier for customers to work with Java and work with our application service. So again, this is just another study from IDC. These two factors have led to a number of predictions. So if you subscribe to different analyst papers or talk with analysts regularly as part of your enterprise planning process, we've all seen this coming together. We're not unique in our view that cloud is definitely a driver in how we're going to be doing business for the next few years. So one of the predictions that's come out that we think is very much true is from Gartner. They have a document they put out in December where they made their middleware predictions for 2012. And one of the big predictions they made was that by 2014, all leading application servers will feature a cloud-enabled internal architecture. And we think that's largely true. The good news here is that when Rich talks, he's going to talk about how here it is 2 years earlier than that prediction, and in fact, our next generation platform, in fact, supports cloud-enabled architecture already. Another really important piece of the puzzle when it comes to building applications in the cloud is how you're working with data with the application itself. These new patterns do not always leverage themselves best for certain types of traditional on-premise solutions. So relational databases have their place for sure, and they certainly have their place in the cloud in some instances, but when it comes to building a cloud-enabled elastic application, we're starting to see a really big growth in terms of in-memory data usage. So how an application can leverage in-memory databases, how they can work with data in the cloud is a bit of a different set of use cases. So we're also going to be addressing this prediction a little later in the presentation. So on that note, I'm actually going to turn it over to Rich Sharples. He's the Director of Product Management for our application products, and he's going to be walking us through EAP 6. Here you go, Rich.
Okay, thanks, and thanks everybody for joining today. So I'll get into a bit of detail today. You will likely have lots of questions. Please use the text chat to ask questions. If we run out of time, I'll definitely continue to answer questions. I'll move them to my blog. I'll provide the URL, and I'll update a blog post throughout the day with all the questions we're getting and we don't have time to answer. So don't hold back on the questions. So just starting with the 50,000-foot view, this is a very, very ambitious release. EAP 6 is both it's a major release of the underlying Java platform, Java E6, and we've also made some major changes within the application platform itself to address some of the operational requirements. But the fundamental goal of EAP 6 is basically to deliver better value across the full application lifecycle. JBoss has always done a great job of appealing to developers and satisfying developer needs. In many ways, JBoss historically has been built by developers for developers. And studies we've commissioned show that pretty starkly that developing on JBoss, because it's typically the preferred tool anyway, is cheaper, is more efficient, and far more productive than developing against competitors' products. But when it comes to the post-development, the operational rollouts and provisioning and ongoing maintenance, the costs, if you extract the licensing fees, the costs, the operating costs kind of look very, very similar. Managing JBoss is really no more efficient than managing WebSphere WebLogic. So that's really the thing we want to address with this release, is to for the extended life cycle of your application, beyond development, so for the 5 or 7 years that you need to manage the application, that's the cost that we want to tackle, because that's the bulk of the long-term cost of an application anyway. So that's really really the goal here, is to really reduce those operational costs, and that comes down to the human costs, making people more efficient, people who are managing, diagnosing, debugging, provisioning, deploying, making all of those operations much easier and streamlined. Comes down to performance and scalability. That affects the amount of infrastructure required to run a workload. But we absolutely don't want to lose track of developer productivity. We continue to push ahead in that space as well. So just a reminder of Red Hat's model. We have a fairly standard model. We have upstream community projects, and we have fully supported enterprise products, products that we will provide long-term support for, provide regular releases, new features, certify against a whole host of JVMs, databases, other third-party products. All of the things you require to consider deploying on JBoss or Red Hat. The community projects are focused on driving innovation. They move very, very quickly, release fast and released often. We often break things in the community. The goal is to get new technology out in the customer's hands as quickly as possible. It's a proving ground for new innovation, and we often compromise, compatibility and that kind of long-term stability. If you need long-term stability, then the enterprise platforms is where you need to look. Just very quickly, showing the difference between the two upstream community releases and the downstream enterprise platforms. Okay, let's get into a little bit more detail. So, we claim we are, EAP is cloud ready. All other JBoss products that were based on EAP, the same will ring true as well. I want to convince you that we're not just cloud washing our story here. We put over the last 2 years, we've put a huge amount of effort into areas that we predicted would be important for large-scale, heavily virtualized environments. Let's consider what it means to be cloud ready. Any cloud, public, private, hybrid is going to require a high degree of automation. Cloud deployments will need to react to bursty workloads. You'll need to instantly provision and deprovision new compute resources to deal with load, and obviously return the resources back to the pool when they're done. So that's a prerequisite for cloud computing, right? Cloud computing is all about managing resources and making best use of resources and being able to scale for these bursty workloads. Cloud computing benefits typically benefit from economies of scale. So consolidation is bound to happen with these large-scale cloud deployments. The management infrastructure also needs to be flexible. There is no single cloud model. We have EC2, we have OpenStack, and others we're not aware of yet. And we need, customers are going to expect to be able to burst out their cloud onto any and all of those things. So we need very, very flexible management to be able to deal with all of those different cloud topologies. Resource utilization is super important. Again, cloud computing's promise is around exploiting economies of scale to drive down costs. So frugal use of resources is super important here. Another promise of cloud computing is the ability for developers to move much, much quicker. Better go provision new hardware and software so they can start work, rather than having to go fill out a purchase order for a new server, install software, and then start development. So the expectation today is you can just start developing as soon as you're ready. So lean, agile development is certainly a requirement. And then last but not least is openness. Cloud represents a new opportunity by some vendors to do another round of vendor lock-in. Just a warning, there are many cool and interesting technologies, platform as a service, for example, that superficially look very interesting. But when you look at the kind of long-term effect of essentially being locked into a single programming model or paradigm, those technologies look less attractive. We have very, very strong open DNA, both open source and open standard. Nothing we do will lock you in. The only way we attempt to lock you in is with a good experience and good value. So we're not trying to push proprietary programming models here. So just briefly, we expect you to deploy JBoss middleware in the future to heavily virtualized environments, on-demand environments, both on physical, traditional deployments, virtual, heavily virtualized environments, or private and public, or most likely hybrid clouds. But that's all talk, and talk is cheap. If you don't believe any of this, we've had AS7 available as a platform as a service on OpenShift for about 6 months. It's tried and tested, field tested. We have many, many hundreds of applications running on JBoss on OpenShift as a platform as a service. We've learned many lessons from the work we've done with the OpenShift team, and we will continue to drive that experience. OpenShift is free for developers. The only thing we ask you for is an email address. In return, you get a decent experience. We support multiple programming languages and environments: Java, PHP, Ruby, Python, Perl, and Java EE, specifically with JBoss. So don't take my word for it. Give it a spin, and we'll see what you think. So let's drill down into EAP6 and start looking at some of the architecture. This is a continuation of where we've been driving for the last 3 major releases, EAP4, EAP5, and now EAP6, where we've been pushing our microservice container and our kind of modular agenda. Everything in EAP6 is service-based. All the services are cleanly separated. We have a new module system, JBoss modules, which is a very, very powerful non-hierarchical module system. Provides extremely good isolation for applications. Allows you to do things other vendors can't do in terms of isolating applications, including dependencies in applications without the usual resource clashes. It allows us to do some pretty neat things like understanding when we can do class loading in parallel, so we can shorten deployment times, we can shorten startup times because of some of the parallel state machine we use. It also, the module system also allows us to define a interface taxonomy, if you like, so we can communicate to users and customers what we think are the public APIs and what we think are the hidden private stuff, the stuff we would like you not to use. And that allows us to iterate and change those private APIs without impacting your applications. So that makes it much more supportable. The MSC, the modular service container, is a parallel finite state machine that manages dependencies between services. It understands when it can load services in parallel using the module system. Very, very powerful. DMR, the dynamic module representation, is essentially the core management API that all of the other management interfaces use. It's a very flexible D-typed API, so allows a high degree of compatibility across releases. Ensure that those management APIs stay stable across releases. So let's dive into, there are essentially two modes that you can run EAP6 in. The first one is the distributed or domain mode, where you want to deploy a number of JBoss servers across a number of different physical machines or virtual machines, but still manage them from a centralized place. And the design goal here is to treat a group of servers and make it as easy to manage as a single server. It's a fairly familiar architecture. There are only so many ways of doing this, and this probably doesn't look too dissimilar from WebSphere, WebLogic, Glassfish. We have some new concepts in JBoss. We have a domain controller, which is the kind of master controller to allow configuration and application deployments, controlling server instances across a distributed domain. We have host managers and host controllers on each machine to manage the server instances, and also to act as slaves to the domain controller and propagate configuration and deployments to manage servers. We have server groups. You can arbitrarily group servers and treat them as one. You may have a group of servers that have similar physical characteristics or logical characteristics that you deploy the same application on. These grouping, domains and server groups are completely orthogonal to high availability clusters. You can run, clusters within a domain, across domains, and really any way that makes sense. The configuration is centralized with a domain controller. It's in no way, the host controllers and domain controllers are in no way a single point of failure. If losing the domain controller or host controllers simply means that administration functions are turned off. And I would expect in an secure operational environment, it would be quite common to turn those things off anyway, because they represent an attack surface, because they have APIs, remotable APIs. We elected not to build in a hugely complex HA capability into the domain controller. It would far exceed the complexity of the domain controller itself, when its presence is completely optional. If it fails or if you turn it off, it's very, very easy to turn back on again. You can use run it as a daemon process and have it automatically restart. Now, one thing we've done very, very differently from our competitors is made the managed domain mode completely optional. One piece of feedback we got very, very loudly from people who'd moved from other proprietary vendors was that the management infrastructure often requires way more management than the server instances themselves. And we absolutely didn't want to force a management regime on customers. We have many customers who are deploying very, very large scale. They have very, very specific requirements about how they manage. And they really wanted to preserve the simplicity of being able to manage a single instance and basically own management themselves. So we've preserved that capability, and that's great for developers who just require a single instance. They don't want all of the management stuff to get in the way of a good developer experience. For those people who are deploying at scale and who need to either integrate with existing management tools or create their own, then the management infrastructure of JBoss will just move out of the way, and the server instance becomes the unit of automation. Again, uses all the same APIs, the same domain representation, the same concepts, and the same APIs and protocols. So whether you're managing groups or domains or single instances from a management perspective, it's consistent. Okay, so in terms of tools and APIs, again, one of the big goals of EAP 6 is to make it ultimately programmable from an administration point of view. So as well as providing a powerful web console, and we'll talk a little bit about that, as well as continuing to support JBoss Operations Network, we've also introduced a scriptable command line interface, very, very powerful CLI. But we've also provided APIs for every management function. So you can continue to use JMX, you can use a RESTful API or a Java API. We have a consistent, stable management API based on the DMR. And if none of those satisfy you, you can still hack XML files. We would certainly like to believe that all of these other methods are preferable to configuration by XML, but if that's the way that works, then we still preserve that. And in fact, we put a huge amount of effort into making the underlying XML configuration much, much easier and easier to understand and manage. We've radically simplified it, we've reduced the number of files, and increased the consistency across the various configuration elements. But fundamentally, we expect people to increasingly use the management APIs, and again, they're all built on this this dynamic E-typed API. So they're all fundamentally based on the same management API and will remain stable and consistent across releases. Talk a little bit about the CLI. It's great to watch people play with the CLI. It's based on some very, very familiar concepts. If you're familiar with Linux or Unix shell syntax, then you will dive right in. It has a really wonderful contextual tab completion feature where any command or any resource or attribute can be tab completed. So it allows you to work like a magician. You can do things extremely quickly without having to remember a ton of attribute names and command names. It provides access to really every single element of configuration you could imagine, so you can get into the real detail and automate at that level. But it also provides some compound high-level operations, things like creating new resources, rolling out deployments. They're multi-step operations, often multi-step across servers, and they're all transactional and can be rolled back. Any changes you make via any of the admin APIs are persisted into the underlying configuration files. So, again, our preference would be, and our expectation is that customers would increasingly use the CLI or one of the APIs, the RESTful API or the Java API. So the web console, we've started with a new web console. It's built using Google Web Toolkit, extremely fast, very, very lightweight. And the real goal of the built-in console is to ensure that you don't have to dig down into XML configuration files to manage stuff. It's great for occasional users or people who are new to JBoss and they may not be familiar with the APIs or the command line interface, the more powerful tools. So they need a little bit more context and a little bit more help and some validation. It's a great tool for those folks. It's not the big, heavyweight, complex console some people may be familiar with. It works in both single instance mode as well as domain mode, so you can manage across server instances. And it, fundamentally is focused on configuration, but there are some basic monitoring capabilities as well. This point I should add, it's not intended to be a replacement for JBoss Operations Network. This is the built-in tool. It's the default tool. It's simple and lightweight, very fast, but it in no way competes with JBoss Operations Network 3, which is part of our managed offering for EAP and other products. JBoss Operations Network is focused on managing all products within the JBoss portfolio, from ESBs and portals to EAP, web servers as well. It manages multiple products, but also multiple versions of those products. It covers monitoring, has some real in-depth monitoring and performance management, historical logging and analysis of performance, has the ability to create very sophisticated custom dashboards so you can monitor just the things, your key performance indicators, has some powerful provisioning and deployment options to automate those activities. So, it goes way above and beyond what the default built-in console provides. But it does build on top of those same management APIs. So it uses the power of the underlying domain management capabilities. Talk a little bit about performance. If you think back, EAP 4 and 5 were fundamentally based on a very, very similar architecture. Based on Java 5, JDK 1.5, 1.6. Really kind of based on last decade's technology. EAP 6 is absolutely based on this and next decade's technology. We kind of assume you'll be deploying on massively parallel processors. Most of our laptops and cell phones and tablets have multi-CPUs, and it's pretty standard now to have a 4 or 8 core server machine. So we have designed across the board. We've designed for parallelism and concurrency. So we have a lockless concurrent class loader, concurrent service activation. So that's how we can get some of the startup times and deployment times down as low as we have. We've made some significant performance enhancements in messaging. We're talking factors of 100 here. It's significantly faster than the previous generation of messaging. One of the reasons is a native NIO-based journal for persistent messages. We have a new and improved caching technology. InfiniSpan is the next generation of JBoss caching technology. Inside EAP6, we use it for the JPA or Hibernate second-level cache. We also use it for session replication for HA deployments. InfiniSpan was, again, designed for this decade and next decade. It was designed for the cloud era and cloud scale, if you like. So performs and scales way better than previous implementations. And we've more from a process point of view and less of a technology point of view, we've focused on benchmarking down at the component level and more holistic server level much earlier in the development lifecycle. And what all this will result, sometime this year, will be a Spec JEnterprise 2010 submission. Spec JEnterprise 2010 is the kind of industry standard benchmark for Java EE. So hopefully you'll be able to compare JBoss in a fair and reasonable way with other products from Oracle and IBM. Another, it's very early days for performance testing. Now we have a stable feature complete release with the beta, then the performance testing can really start in earnest, and that's ongoing. These charts, don't worry about the detail. They were from last September, so they're pretty ancient already. But they show even without any real performance work that JBoss AS7, an early version of JBoss AS7.1, already outperformed EAP 5 by about 30%. So, the initial starting baseline is extremely favorable. Now we just need to, get down and start the real performance work. So, hopefully we'll push this even further. So again, we're looking at, on these charts, both response time and throughput being the two major, baseline benchmarks for throughput. Another aspect of performance is more and more around resource utilization. So the memory usage of EAP6 will be significantly lower than previous versions and our competitors as well. Again, using some baselines, early baselines from AS7, we've made significant improvements in memory usage. Some of that is just how we do some of the annotation scanning. Some of it's the dynamic loading of services and modules, and just general improvements. In addition, boot time. This is really good for developers. There's no longer this myth that you have lightweight Java containers like Jetty and Tomcat, and you have heavyweight dinosaurs like WebSphere and WebLogic. JBoss has demonstrated that it can be just as lightweight as the lightweight containers, but include all of the real enterprise capabilities of WebSphere and WebLogic. So, we have boot time down to a few seconds compared to 10, 20, 30 seconds for previous versions and some of their competitors' products. Again, some of the parallel class loading and service activation and lazy loading is responsible there. Now, both of these indicators have have another impact, not just beyond developers. When we think about cloud deployments, we're typically talking about very high density, heavily virtualized environments where resource utilization is much more apparent. When you shift mentality from paying for physical servers as physical commodities to paying for compute and memory and network bandwidth usage on an hourly basis, you will become cost of memory will become a much more important topic than it is today. That's one thing we've really worked hard at, is to push down the resource utilization, whether that's memory, CPU, or ports, network ports. And some of the work we did with OpenChef has really helped drive that right down as far as possible. Okay, so that's some of the operational concerns, but I want to make it really clear that we're absolutely not abandoning developers. There's a huge amount of cool stuff here for developers as well. We need to provide this very agile, efficient, and great developer experience if people are going to deploy on JBoss. We get some of that for free with Java E6. We're adding support for mobile, HTML5, open web. We've had a big push around Maven. All of these things, test-driven automation with Archillion, all of these things will provide a great developer experience and make developers more efficient and more productive, and lower time to market for new applications. So very quick recap of Java E6. It's been out a while. The focus was fundamentally about driving out some of the complexity, really making, going back to the roots of Java, which is essentially a plain old Java object-based paradigm versus an intrusive framework. If you think back to container managed persistence and the early days of EJB. It's annotation-based, injection-based. It's a modern platform. It's extremely robust. It's 10 years old, 12 years old, has a huge following, a huge community, and it's a standard. You can rely on multiple vendors, multiple implementation, even different license choices. There are open source licenses and there are proprietary licenses. So you have a choice of who you want to work with. It's a big new release of Java EE, and my conversations with developers and customers so far have led me to believe that there's definitely renewed interest in E6. But just as a checkpoint, we have a quick poll here. We'd like to get your view on, has Java E6 made you more or less interested in Java EE as the standard for Java? And it'd be really useful for us to understand when you plan to both develop and deploy on Java E6. We will make the results available to everybody who attends. So, please take a few seconds just to do that very, very short survey. Some more areas of developer productivity. There's more features, more to talk about than we have time for today, but we'll certainly do more in other forums. One of the big drives we've been going through is support for Maven. Maven is the really kind of de facto part of the developer tool chain now. So we have both what you'll find with a beta when you go to download it. There's also basically a EAP6 Maven repo that you can import into your own local repository. Easily build against JBoss. There is a plan to have a hosted repo as well, which again will be even more convenient for many. We have invested a huge amount of time in providing quick starts to help developers get up to speed quickly with some of these new Java E6 concepts, and specifically how that will be done the JBoss way. So we have all of those quick starts are all Maven-based, so they're extremely simple to get running. It's literally one command line or a few key clicks, and you're compiled, deployed, and running. So we have great Maven tools integration, and a hosted Maven repo coming real soon this month. Okay, so in the interest of time, let's just kind of do a quick recap of the AP6. So big design drivers when we started out 2 years ago. We were expecting high density, heavily virtualized environments where memory, ports, all of those compute resources would be in scarce supply. So we've driven a lot of efficiency into the AP6. We're expecting very large-scale deployments, so either private, hybrid, or public cloud deployments can gain the benefit of the economies of scale and the economics of cloud. So we have a very, very flexible management infrastructure. Essentially, EAP6 is entirely programmable from a management point of view, via a RESTful API, via a Java API, or via the scriptable command line interface. We absolutely care about developer efficiency. So, Maven, Archillion for test-driven development, some of the tooling around JBDS, support for mobile. All of these things will make development much more efficient, allow you to quickly develop more sophisticated applications in less time. We continue to care about portability and open standards. It's in our DNA. It's not going away anytime soon. So anything we do, whether it's traditional on-prem software, where we take that stuff in the cloud, you'll be able to follow with us. Right? We're not trying to create walled gardens with our technology. And we put a decent amount of effort into just overall ease of use. One of the criticisms generally of open source is it has a few rough edges, and that's generally been forgiven by the early adopters. Increasingly, our customers are a more mainstream customer and familiar with other technologies. They have an expectation of a very, very different level of user experience, and it's something we've worked hard to focus on in this release, and we'll continue to focus on in future releases. Just some logistics of how to access the beta. So it will be available within the next 24 hours. May already be available. It was being staged this morning. But for existing customers, it's available via the usual place, the customer portal. It will not be available via Red Hat Network for the beta. What you'll get the quick starts, you'll get the EAP6, you also get the Maven repository and documentation. And it's available to everybody. It's available to existing customers via the customer portal. It's also available to new customers and prospects. There's a URL here, and we'll post it on the chat window as well. Now, even for new customers, it's worth going to that little microsite because it has a whole bunch of additional content, some videos and stuff to help you get started. So, take a look at that URL, redhat.com/promo EAP6 beta. EAP6 represents a long-term release family. It's not just a single release. We expect people to be deploying on EAP6 for many, many years to come. And as such, we will be pushing a long-term roadmap. We're already planning a 6.1 and potentially a 6.2 release. Some of the things that will drop into the 6.1 would be our common criteria certification. That's something we do for the security certification for our federal government customers. A local patching capability, and also increased, better mobile development support, potentially WebSockets and other technologies. So, in general, we're looking for ideas. Use the beta as an opportunity to provide some feedback. We've already, just from this morning's session, we've already got some additional ideas of things we could look at. So, keep those ideas coming. Through the beta, you can file issues, you can file RFEs, give us some feedback. And then beyond that, we're starting to think about Java E7. It's probably a couple of years out. The big focus of Java E7 is to make cloud and platform as a service a first-class citizen for Java EE. I'd like to think we're already there with EAP6, so we'll be pushing what we've learned into the Java community process and helping drive that standard. It's not clear exactly what EAP7 will look like. Middleware may not look the same as it does today, so I'm certainly open for discussions around that. Now, EAP6, is not just a single product. There are a constellation of supporting products. We have a full set of developer tooling, JBDS, which is based on JBoss tools, which is based on Eclipse. That's our Eclipse-based tooling. That's available now. Web Framework 2 gives us support from some of the mobile and open web frameworks and APIs. They'll be available pretty much imminently. John 3 is available now. It supports the EAP6 beta to a large extent. It's likely we'll do a John 3.1 to fully support EAP6 at GA, but for now, you can use John 3 and EAP6 together. And as I've mentioned already, a hosted Maven repo coming later this month. One additional product is JBoss Data Grid that would really requires a whole extra hour to talk about it. A very, very exciting product. It's a pure in-memory distributed key value store. It's a very, very exciting space. So if you're looking to really scale your data tier, if you're having data scaling problems, then that's a product to look at later this month as we go into beta. It's based on InfiniSpan. That's the same InfiniSpan we use internally in EAP6 to do session replication and second level cache. Data Grid just allows you many, many more deployment topologies and supports many, many more use cases. So, look out for that when it arrives as well. It's a very, very exciting technology. with that, I'll hand back to Jason.
Great. So thank you, Rich. One final note just to bring up for everybody is that we obviously are excited about the beta, and it's available at any moment now, really. The next major thing we have going on in terms of an event is JBoss World and Red Hat Summit in June, and it's registration's open. I actually believe that the presentations and abstracts and agenda will be published today or tomorrow. So the information's out there. You can go to jbossworld.com to learn more and sign up. Naturally, we're going to have a big bulk of the engineering team and the product management team there to talk about EAP 6 and DataGrid 6 and everything else. So we look forward to seeing you at that. We're also targeting the production release, the full GA, for later this spring for EAP. So that's also something we have going on that you'll be hearing more from us about in the coming weeks and months. So on to some of the questions that were put in. I'm just going to ask a few. So do you have any comments about any differences between the EAP 6 and the AS, really? It's,
Yeah, so the beta is when AS and EAP 6 start to diverge. So the beta is based on 7.1.1 plus a bunch of additional bug fixes. As we continue to move forward, we'll diverge even more in terms of the binary release. We will start to do performance work. We'll start to do certifications against JVMs and databases. And then we start the release stream, right? So we'll start to release patches for EAP 6 on a regular basis. So within 9 months, we'll be pretty different from the baseline AS 7.1, which will essentially be, from a binary release, will be pretty much frozen. Typically our bug release could fix 100 bugs. So if you think every quarter we fix another 150 bugs, we start to diverge pretty quickly in terms of performance and quality. Now everything we do is obviously open source. You can if you're happy and willing to build and maintain your own JBoss AS7, you can build your own upstream and get those bug fixes as well.
Okay, great, thanks. Can the EAP 6 CLI, command line interface, deploy a web app across multiple instances at once?
Yeah, that's the design goal. So anything you can do to a single instance, you should be able to do to multiple instances. So deployment, configuration, that's the whole idea. Yeah.
Okay. Can we see and configure all application servers under domain controller from the admin console of domain controller? So I think the answer to that is yes, right? You can see all the app servers under the domain.
That's right. You can get a physical and a logical view. A logical view is the configuration. Physical view is the running instances. So yes, you can view all of that.
Okay. I'll take this one. JBoss training courses, JBoss application administration. So this has been something that's been raised by customers and business partners for a while, is the availability of courseware for JBoss at the same time as a launch. I'm happy to report with EAP 6, we will have the courses available at the same time. I know that the administration course is basically gone very well. We've already done an internal pilot of that. And I think in the next week or two, we're actually doing internal pilots of the developer course as well, which I don't know the number for that, but I know the developer course is going to be getting some major enhancements. So they will be available at the GA later this spring.
Yeah, I would add, the admin course, I did one of the early pilots. It's a really, really well put together course, and it's worth the money. You will come out as a JBoss CLI Jedi, and people will be awestruck at your powers after that course.
Cool. Is John 3 packaged with EAP 6? Also a kind of packaging question. So what we have with our subscriptions last year is we changed it so we have effectively what we call managed offerings. And a managed offering does package the runtime, which would be EAP, with JBoss Operations Network. So for a managed offering subscriber, the answer to your question is yes. If you haven't bought that subscription, then you would just get EAP and the associated entitlements to development tools. So it depends on the subscription offering. Rich, a question about patching here. EAP 6 contain a more streamlined patch and fix process. Will be a better way to do it.
Yeah, we had to defer the patching capabilities. So yeah, the plan is the design was to have a native patching capability built into the core app server. We had to defer that. It wasn't quite where it needed to be. But that will be a feature of EAP 6.1. So yes, that's, yep.
So let's go back up a couple more. Let's see, EJB 2.1.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. That's a requirement for Java EE6. It's the we got to haul around the baggage of legacy versions. So yeah, it's still there. Again, unfortunately, but yeah, it's there.
Will the zip file with the Maven artifacts be provided in the EAP 6 distribution, or is it a separate deliverable?
It's a separate file, and it's pretty obvious from the CSP.
Okay, from the CSP. SOA platform fulfilled the launcher. We have to wait. So where we are with the other products, or what we internally call the upstack products, which is SOA, BRMS Portal, and others, there is a roadmap for SOA Platform 6. It will be based on EAP 6, and that's coming later. Okay, so another question. So I think later this spring we'll have a more firm roadmap on SOA Platform 6. Does the documentation include a guide for migrating existing apps over to EAP?
Yeah, we do have a migration guide, pretty comprehensive. It covers Seam, Hibernate, all the standard APIs. So yep, we certainly do.
JBoss 5 beta does not include EAP 6.
Yeah, my understanding is it does support EAP 6. Maybe from a menu option point of view, it may say AS7. I'll look into that. I'm gonna answer all these questions with a bit more detail and post them to my blog. So I'll drill into that one.
Yeah, we're only going to do a couple more, and then, like I said, Rich will answer the questions from this morning. There's actually a ton of great questions here, so we do appreciate it. The Java 7 support.
Yeah, it's Java 7 support out of the box. That's primarily what we're focused on. Java 6 is going end of life pretty rapidly. So AS7 has always run on Java 7. So yeah.
Okay, quick question. Somebody mentioned a couple of questions about OpenShift. Any pricing information? I would just say stay tuned on OpenShift. There's some news coming out from that team. We're a different team than OpenShift, so I'm going to defer that. If we can try to get those questions answered for you, we will. So thanks for those questions. And then, okay, this is a good one about EWS. Let's see. Will EWS 102 be certified with EAP 6 mod cluster? I actually think okay. EWS question.
Yeah, we'll certify. Yeah, we'll certify the web server version in EWS with the latest mod cluster in EAP 6. Yep.
When is EWS expected to update Tomcat Summit?
Yeah, so we have an EWS 2.0 coming out later this year. I think we're going to try and get in beta in the spring, April-ish time frame. And that will be Tomcat 7 and the latest version of the Apache web server.
Okay. Just going to do one more scripting tool. What kind of scripting tools are available?
Yeah, so I did cover fairly briefly the JBoss CLI. So you'll see that if you install EAP 6 under the bin directory, there's a JBoss CLI shell. That's a scriptable or dynamic shell environment. Extremely powerful and pretty much allows you to do anything. It's like like handing a chainsaw to a baby. It allows you to modify pretty much anything. All changes are persisted. It's a very, very, very powerful tool. Very, very neat.
Great. So thanks, Rich. Thank you again, everybody, for joining in on today's webinar. I just rolled back to the slide with the EAP6 beta website. My understanding is I'll be live probably first thing in the morning. We did get verification while talking that the beta is now available on the customer support portal as well. So our existing customers can actually begin to download it now. Thank you all very much. And we'll close this up. And again, follow-up questions will be coming via Rich's blog.